Kathy, I would ask that you sit on that far side so I can get up and jump around.
Oh, I didn't realize.
I know, it's this thing that,
Yeah, it just scared me. I didn't realize there were like 3 levelers. Ooh. This is weird. Yeah.
George, this George.
I've looked
Yeah, you know everything. Street.
living down here and then we too.
You're gonna sit in a less conspicuous.
Yeah, I know.
Catherine, where do you want to sit? Well, only so far because there are plugs underneath that I don't want to. Yeah.
Myself with the laptop.
There's not one cord, it's another. Oh, you're going that way. Well, I can only go this so far.
Yeah.
And your knees?
Yes.
For little people.
Back in the olden days.
Church, the chairs were different.
Yeah, the chairs were probably like those over there or something, but I keep thinking my knees lose twice a week.
So,
I crossed. Well, that's why I'm way back here. But now I'm gonna work, so. What's yours?
good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first in-person meeting of the Planning Commission in about 15 or 16 months. It's wonderful to be back here in the council chambers, so welcome. We will begin our public hearings in just a moment. We have one item of business to take care of before we get to that, and that would be action on the minutes of our meeting from earlier this month. Minutes have been circulated in advance of this meeting. Is there a motion for action on those minutes from June the 7th?
Move approval of the minutes of June 7th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. And that will take us right into the public hearings for this evening. Each application will be announced by a member of the staff, and we will ask the applicant or the representative to come to the center podium and microphone, provide your name and address for the record and a brief summary of the application. Following any questions or points of clarifications needed by the commission members, we will then invite members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the application to do so. And then we will extend a similar invitation to those members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application. and where comments are made in opposition, we will encourage the applicant to return to address the comments made in opposition. We haven't done that in a while, in that format. Unmute yourself, mute yourself, unmute yourself. Anyways, it's nice to be back in this format. I think it runs more smoothly. In any case, we are ready for our first public hearing, and Jeff or Heather, would you please introduce our first application?
Sure. Good evening, Commission members. Mr. Kulik, the first public hearing is AS 2106. This is an administrative permit for an off-premise advertising sign at 617 to 619 North Geddes Street. JT Pashot Realty LLC is the owner, and Park Outdoor is the applicant. Property lies within a commercial Class A zone.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Steve Frank, and I'm with Park Outdoor Advertising. My home residence is in Tully, New York. We have an office here in East Syracuse, and then our corporate office is in Ithaca, New York. And if I can say so, I've been to a couple of these meetings that were Zoom meetings in the last few months, or 15 months, as you have pointed out. It's nice to trade in the sweatpants and the pajamas for actually being in person, so I'm happy for that. So, okay to start the presentation? We're good?
Please, yes.
Okay, all right. If I can, I just want to start with a little bit about Park Outdoor ourselves. Park Outdoor has been proudly serving businesses in Syracuse and Onondaga County since 1951. We are headquartered in Ithaca, New York. We have 4 divisions in Elmira, Binghamton, Utica, and Syracuse, and we're a local employer with over 60 employees. We consider ourselves an instrument of economic growth, offering cost-effective, immediate impact commercial awareness for local business, and our operations in the Syracuse market are vital to our company, more so arguably than the other 3 divisions because of the competition that we face here in this market with the 2 largest outdoor companies in the country, in Lamar Outdoor and Outfront Advertising. So for a small company from Ithaca, New York to compete and have the opportunity to be in the same market with them, it's extremely important for us to operate in this market with circumstances that lead us to having good relationships, not only with local business owners and local landowners, but local municipalities like the city of Syracuse themselves. So our application is to build a new back-to-back bulletin billboard structure reading to 690 at the corner of North Geddes and Edison Street. And this is a property that's owned by Joe Pachot or JT Pachot Realty. It is an empty lot. It is zoned commercial. And this structure would be, you have copies of the application that shows the zoning of the property in itself being commercial. And then you also have a copy of the survey and a copy of the site plan showing the structure as well. There is also a structure print that would show at the billboard at the base of the property on Geddes and Edison. If you were standing at the base, the structure would be 40 feet tall, but that would only be 30 feet above the road deck, which is required by city code. So the 40 feet would put us at the 30-foot viewing datum. You have a structure print on that as well. And then you also have artist renditions of what that billboard would look like traveling on 690 from both the eastbound traffic coming eastbound and westbound in and out of the city. On the 21st of June, Jeff Harrop had sent me notes regarding our application being submitted to various city departments and the department comments with our ability to go ahead and respond to those comments. And I'm not sure if everybody has our comments or not. I had sent those to Jeff on Friday. Gotcha. And I can go through these one by one. So This went through a number of different departments with the city, and the first one to comment was DPW street repair, with the comment being all existing utilities must be located. That's standard with what we do. Anytime that we do any type of construction project, we're going to order an underground utility search, but we wouldn't go ahead and order that until we had approval for our administrative permit. The comment from engineering design was to obtain all required permits for construction, verify with DOT, and again, the response here would be both the building permit from the city and the subsequent DOT permit, which would be a review as well, would both be contingent on us receiving our administrative permit approval from the city. The city engineer's zoning comment was to obtain necessary permits. I've already talked about requiring the permits. Those would all be subject to approval of this administrative permit. The most comments were from the DPW transportation planner. That transportation planner noted that this property is located again on a corner in the city. It's on the corner of North Geddes and Edison Streets. The transportation planner noted that the sidewalks along Geddes and Edison Street needed to be replaced. Another note said that the driveway / apron / access point along Edison Street needed to be clarified and brought into a state of good repair, and that overgrowth on the empty lot near the corner of Geddes and Edison would need to be removed. Our response to that is the landowner, Joe Petrote, has been in contact with Chris Ettinger of the City of Syracuse DPW about their sidewalk assessment program. Chris came out, looked at the property, measured it out. We have an estimate, or Mr. Petrote has an estimate from them. Should the administrative permit be approved, Mr. Petrote will utilize the city's program to replace the sidewalk. Mr. Petrote will also address and repair the lot access point along Edison Street. And Mr. Petrote will also remove the overgrowth at the corner of Edison and Geddesons. And again, all of these repairs would be subject to the approval of this city administrative permit, as well as the DOT permit and then subsequent building permit. Any questions on the comments from the city departments? Good? Okay. Also, in the attachment from Jeff, I received a resolution from the Onondaga County Planning Board dated June 2nd, 2021. This would be the Onondaga County Planning Board case number Z-21-170, where the comments were the city must ensure appropriate approvals and permits obtained from DOT and proposed signage. And again, I would point to the fact that any required DOT permit would be obtained prior to construction, but subject to approval of this permit application. The additional comment from the planning board, the Onondaga County Planning Board, was discouraging the placement of the new billboard near existing residential land uses, as they are generally considered incompatible in scale and aesthetic. Again, the lot that we're on is an existing lot that's zoned appropriate for this sign. It's zoned commercial. The proposed sign would be elevated 40 feet above Geddes and Edison Streets, that height of 40 feet. The sign faces will be angled and V'd, so they're facing the 690 roadway. Any light for these faces is directed upward, and it's regulated by a timer that turns on the lights at dusk, turns them off at midnight. Those lights don't shine down, they don't shine on the board, they shine upward. Relative to the planning board's comments as far as it being near a residential neighborhood, I'd like to point out there is an existing digital billboard located 1,800 feet to the east of our proposed location along Route 690 and West Belden Avenue. This existing billboard is located between two houses that have apartments, and those houses are on lots that are zoned residential. Additionally, this existing billboard is powered and lighted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Different circumstances than what we would have here with a static billboard that would just have lights on in the evening. So, in conclusion, with this, I think that the city's request to bring this lot, this empty lot, vacant lot, up to standards that the city would like to see from a sidewalk perspective, the owners agreed to do that, to clean up the lot with relative to any overgrowth and stumps and shrubbery, that would be taken care of as well. And then as far as it being close to any residential property, if you're standing on the property in itself, to the north is Route 690. To the west is business, to the east is Geddes Street, and you go across Geddes Street, and then there would be a home on the corner there, and then to the south, there would be a residence there too. So, but I do believe that with the prior billboard pointed out, I did send a picture of that as well in support of this, that we should be, granted approval for this permit. So with that, I will take any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there are questions from the commission members.
I have a question for staff. I thought with the other billboard in the area, we had discussed at one point the idea of looking at the number of billboards within a particular area and trying not to overpopulate, if you will. This is something we talked about as a policy, as I recall, but we never did anything about it, correct?
There are distance restrictions in the ordinance. I don't know what billboard he's talking about, or we would have to investigate the address, if it's legal even, how it got there. If it's in a residential district, I have no idea how it got there.
I would add that as far as spacing requirements with the Federal Highway Administration and New York State DOT, this is well within the spacing requirements separated by billboards along that roadway, along the interstate.
I think the discussion was more from a city planning perspective, whether or not we wanted to raise the bar.
I got you.
We did have a policy where they were measured from the point of the billboard within a radius of a certain distance. That's not done because anymore, because the courts have pointed out that as if it's in keeping with the Highway Beautification Act, their state or their standard is to measure where the visible points are of the sign, so basically where you can read the sign. So if I might clarify the question a little bit, are you asking, like, if we were to measure the distance, we would be measuring it from that vantage point. So what is the distance between this with its visibility? Like, is it?
So it would be a linear measurement that you're
Yes,
referring to, not a
yes.
radial measurement. So the linear, we would be between two existing structures, far from that 500-foot spacing requirement. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that when we did the measurements, both on Google Earth and then with our own measurements in itself, that we were well within the spacing requirements that are regulated by the Highway Beautification Act, the Federal Highway Administration, and New York State DOT.
So I just want to clarify to Chris's point, she's talking about over-densification of over-concentration. Catherine's point is that was with respect to billboards that can be seen from the highway, so that doesn't affect anything else in the neighborhood. So I just want to clarify that.
So essentially, FHWA, DOT, and/or the Highway Beautification Act, all of those would take precedence over what we have currently in the zoning code.
They have to issue a permit for all of these along the highway.
Right.
And not necessarily, we can adopt stricter policies, but with respect to those visible from the highway, I believe the local law says in a little parenthetical that cites highway beautification, which is why courts have said that we have to use their standards when applying that. But I believe that language has changed in rezone, which of course isn't effective, but something that's being considered.
But if it's not in rezone, I would think that that's a good thing. And if we don't have something that looks at over concentration and rezone's going to move forward to completion, we should make sure something's in there. Okay, thank you. That's all of them.
Additional questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come to the podium, provide your name and address and your comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? If so, come to the podium, please. Okay, no additional speakers. We're at a moment where we might close the hearing, or I'm going to defer to my colleague with the question to see if there's additional information that might be needed with regard to the other installation that was cited.
I'm all set.
Okay. In that case, we'll close this public hearing and proceed to see if there's a motion for action either way. This is AS-21-06, the proposed administrative permit for the site in the 600 block of North Geddes Street. Is there a motion?
In line with the discussion on the record, that would move approval, the negative declaration. But again, noting our discussion on the record, our belief is that there are multiple layers of approval, including New York State Department of Transportation permitting, and as well as our own local standard. If this were to pass, again, the condition is that those other conditions be met, along with our resolution to approve.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? If there is no second, the motion would die from the lack of a second, and I would ask again if there is perhaps a different motion for action on this, AS-21-06. And Madam Legal Counsel, I believe one option we have, if there's no motion before us at the moment, we could return to this item later in the agenda.
Yes.
I would suggest we do that. Perhaps a little more time to think about possible approaches to the application, and that will allow us to move on with additional hearings for this evening. Jeff or Heather, would you please introduce our next hearing?
Next public hearing is SR 2102. This is a site plan review in the James Street overlay for exterior renovations and site alterations at 3114 and 3116-3130 James Street. 3120 James Street LLC is the owner, David Morocco is the applicant, and it lies within the Business Class A zoning district, again with the James Street overlay district.
Thank you.
Mark Arbon, Seraphine and Arbon, 110 West Soyette Street, Suite 1110, Syracuse, New York, attorney for David and Louis Morocco. At about, I guess maybe about 1 o'clock, we had received comments from the transportation planner that were rather extensive and material impact the project. And we were going to request to have our application deferred to another time, but understand that the public hearing had already been noticed. So we can either present our application.
What I might suggest is to proceed with the presentation as it stands today. And since there may be people in the audience who came to support it or oppose it, they will be given an opportunity to speak as well. And then it sounds like a reasonable course of action would be to keep the hearing open.
Okay.
So that you and your team can develop a response to the transportation planners or DPW's comments, whatever comments you were planning to address, and return with those points of clarification and possibly revision at a subsequent meeting. And then when all that information is into the record and people have had yet another opportunity to speak for or against, we can close the hearing and act at that point or subsequent to that point.
Okay.
Is that
Very good.
Are you prepared to say something tonight?
I'll defer to
To start off?
Matt
Okay.
Navarella.
Matt Naparella, Naparella Consulting, site engineer for Dave and Louis Morocco Empire Management. The application is to reutilize, do renovation of the existing structure formerly used as a Rite Aid at the corner of James Street and Holmcroft Road. The existing facility has been vacant and abandoned for quite some time now. Empire Management is looking to reutilize it. They have a lease agreement, potentially contingent upon city site approvals and approvals of such. Looking to utilize that existing building, but do facade renovations, clean it up, and provide a retailer back into that Eastwood neighborhood that's severely lacking, and do some improvements as well. The proposed program, again, interior cleanup and get a retailer in there, facade treatments on all sides. The site impacted, it is paved on both sides of the building today. The proposal is to improve drainage with some dry well structures appropriately graded so that stormwater is controlled and infiltrated into the ground. The surface of that asphalt would be repaired as needed, mill and a top course across that parking area, both on the east and west sides of the facility. The proposal as it stands is to maintain the existing curb cuts that exist both on James Street. There are two parking lots on both, one is on the east side, one is on the west side. Both parking lots serve the needed parking desires for the retail building of that size. Because of the configuration and how it lays out, we are asking that the curb cuts be maintained. There is a third curb cut off to Holmcroft, but that is directly adjacent to a loading dock on the side of the building. And I believe the application included some historical photos of which you'll see a tractor trailer essentially backed up to the loading dock that prevents any utilization of the Holmcroft curb cut for customers. As such, and when discussing with the future tenant the circulation patterns for that truck movement, there is I call it an alleyway on the south side of the building that will be cleaned up. Right now, it's pretty overgrown if you're familiar with the area, but we're looking to improve that alleyway and provide 12-foot wide pavement so that the tractor trailer movement can circulate around the building and get into that loading dock without backing off of the public road, so that he can make that, we call it a counterclockwise movement around the building, back into the loading dock, do what he has to do without impacting Holmcroft Road. So we think it's a better scenario right now or in the past when it was an operational facility. The delivery vehicles were backing off of the public highway. So that's, I guess, a brief summary of what we're looking for. I will say in conversations with Louis and David Morocco in their correspondence with the future tenant, it was critical that the curb cuts be maintained. And I know that the transportation department head and I was telling our attorney, when you look at it in a classic sense, there's arguments to say, well, you should probably close one of those curb cuts because of one or these other reasons. But functionally, when you see this building and you see what's historically has happened and then understand the circulation patterns, you see the need for that curb cut. So with that, we're here for questions and answers. And again, we would like to address the staff level comments prior to a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
I do just want to clarify that 3116 to 3130 James is in a, the property lies within 2 zoning districts, residential B and business class A, and it has a conditional use for that parking lot on the east.
I have a question for staff. So it appears that the current development of the site was prior to the James Street overlay.
Correct.
Okay.
You indicated a lot of cleanup and work, both at the building and the site, but the footprint of the building remains what it is currently. Is that accurate?
Correct. So it's facade treatment only. There will be no structural modifications to the building, except interior, cleanup and such.
And do you know the square footage of the building approximately?
Off the top of my head, no, but I would say, knowing the tenant, roughly 9,000 square feet. Let's see if it's on here. It doesn't, building foot area, 10,000,
62.
yeah, sorry, I couldn't read it. I got half scale, couldn't read it.
That's important.
Thank you both on that point. I didn't mean to jump in if you were still having questions, which you might have.
I have more questions for staff. So what is the required parking for this use?
Follow-up question.
So 10,000 divided by 300, which should be in there.
I was looking, I don't know if maybe I zipped past it.
I think it might be beneficial if you could at least go over the deviations for the commission, so they could perhaps have a discussion about some of the, your justifications for your deviations. That would be helpful, even though they may hold this open. It would be the normal course of action.
And Jeff is telling me it's 34 spaces are required, and I've just
There are
asked.
39
And there are 39. Okay.
on the 2 properties.
On the 2 combined. And those combined on the 2 properties can count towards the 34. Yes. No. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So, just, clarification. Are you talking about reviewing Neil Burke's comments and then how we would tentatively today like to respond to those?
You could do that, but more importantly, right now, the deviations from the James Street overlay and from the zoning ordinance itself is something the commission needs to hear so they can deliberate and make an informed decision.
So there are 2 sets of things going on here.
Yep,
One are the comments from the transportation planner, and I think you kind of suggested you want to think about those a little bit and develop a comprehensive response to those comments. That's one set of comments. But earlier, the applicant should have been provided a set of, a list of characteristics of the project that would require waiver by this body of the zoning ordinance in various instances. And I think there were a number of them. And this body can provide relief in the form of a waiver, but it always does, when it does that, it always does so on the basis of some kind of rationale for that. So I hope you've had the opportunity to see the instances where a waiver would be required, but all is not lost if that is not something that you can address today. It would be helpful to address that in the subsequent meeting where you also address the transportation planner's comments. But the other 9 or 10, I think?
I just counted 9.
9, okay, thank you. That was close.
Unfortunately, David and Louis Morocco, who aren't able to be here tonight, did all of the application pretty much themselves, and we weren't involved in it. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the.
Yeah, it would have gone back to them, as I see that they're the only ones listed on the application.
Yes.
So that's
So-
one piece of information that we in preparation for tonight, and they had a conflict, both of them had a conflict for tonight, and we didn't, I guess we're remiss in apologizing for them and foresight, but, I guess
So,
we would have to defer that to, the
Okay.
next gathering.
and it seems as though we kind of understood from the outset that this this hearing would be held open for the other set of reasons, and now there's an additional set of reasons, so we can deal with all of that at the next meeting or the following meeting, whenever it is that you have had the opportunity to work with the applicant to read through those comments, respond to the transportation planner comments, and then provide a rationale for the waivers, the 9 waivers that are needed. Does that sound?
Can you give me the data that was provided to him so we can tell him what we need to get from him?
If you want to write your name and number down, we can give you a call tomorrow.
Okay.
Steve, before we let these folks go, I think it's fair to say, just by a quick read of the transportation planner's comments, they align with most of the deviations and/or waivers that are being requested. So there'll be some overlap. But I would like to also add that 9 waivers, in my view, I can't speak to my colleagues, but in my view, is a substantial step away from what the zoning is intended to do here, and in particular what the James Street overlay requirements are. So I would certainly encourage you to encourage your client to perhaps take a look at those comments from the transportation planner and make an effort to try to comply with them.
Sir?
And one that's not mentioned in here is that the pylon sign, which is noted, is sort of magically appeared apparently over time. There's no record of the city approving that, and that is specifically a type of sign that is not in conformance with the James Street overlay. I personally, as a member of this commission, would see its removal as a way to bring this property into conformance with a set of standards that community fought long and hard for. So again, I noticed that there's no other sign package as part of this project. So in thinking about signage, I would recommend they consider what they might need in light of the fact that a pylon sign might not be approved. And then the last thing is that the architectural standards in the James Street overlay are intended to make buildings as transparent as possible on the first floor so that we create an inviting experience at the pedestrian level throughout the city. And in particular, again, this corridor has design standards aimed at that very goal. So there are limited windows here. If there would be a way to add more windows, that'd be wonderful. But the windows that are on this building are either entirely or partially covered with opaque film. So removing that film at a minimum and not filling it with signs, but doing as much as possible to help create a transparent first floor would also give us an opportunity to show that, again, the property is being brought into conformance with these particular standards.
So if I can, the 2 things I know with regards to those comments is the sign package will be coming from the nationwide tenant, and so he'll be working with the city. So even though some early renderings showed the tenant quote signage, that'll be coming from that nationwide tenant and not from Empire Management. So, and we can certainly go back and say, the pylon sign is a situation where that needs to be, removed or considered. With regards to architecturally and facade, I've worked with at least Dave Morocco for over 20 years, and every project that he has taken over and did a restoration, he's done a Class A job. And so again, I won't say on a project per project basis, but he will bring in an architectural team and hopefully address those comments to your satisfaction, or to the satisfaction of the overlay district, I should say.
And I think, again, maybe the most important thing to bear in mind with the overlay district is that the intention is to try to create an inviting and
Absolutely.
safe pedestrian experience, which goes to a lot of the transportation planners' comments, as well as where the project currently deviates.
Right.
So I think it would be, well, if everyone's going to have the luxury of waiting for one more meeting, you can revisit some of those issues, and then whoever comes back to present, hopefully will be able to explain why any of the deviations that might remain. But I'm going to be hopeful that some of them might go away with a little redesign.
If this team has the ability to answer those, we will, as was discussed, identify each of those deviations and provide to the board direct answers or justification for each and every one of those. So I guess we were taken a little bit off guard, but we will catch up quickly and provide a detailed response to those items.
That sounds good, and I think you just exchanged information so you can get those comments directly tomorrow. Good. Okay, so are there additional questions or comments for the applicant team that's here today? No? Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you both very much. We'll pause and see if there are any members of the public who wish to speak in favor of this application. In favor? This is SR-21-02, the project in the 3100 block of James Street. Anyone to speak in favor? Then we will ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application. If so, please come to the podium. Okay, no speakers tonight. There'll be an additional opportunity when we continue this public hearing, with it's our next meeting or whenever the applicant is ready. So we will hold this hearing open and we'll move to our next hearing. Heather, Jeff?
The next two public hearings are companion pieces. We have a re-subdivision and a site plan review. The site plan review has been withdrawn in lieu of a variance request to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the required parking. So I'll read them both, but keep in mind that the second public hearing has been withdrawn. Request has been withdrawn. R2126 is a re-subdivision to combine 3 properties into one new lot at 100, 102, and 104 Green Street Court. The Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation is the owner and the applicant. Yes, I thought there was more than one applicant. The properties lie within a residential Class B zoning district. The site plan review that was withdrawn, I will just read it in case anyone was here to speak in favor or against, is SR 2103. This is a site plan review to establish a 38.5-foot wide driveway at 102, 104, and 100 Green Street Court, and the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the owners and applicants, and all of those properties are within a residential Class B zoning district.
Okay, thank you. Sir, please.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, staff, guests. My name is Craig Polhamus. I am the architect for this project, Tiny Homes for Good. You've probably heard of that. We've been here before on various projects, and I think without question, they've all been very successful, and I want to thank you for your past support. The situation here, I will take complete responsibility. I was out walking back pre-COVID in 2019 and happened upon this group of 5 sites with the land bank sign on it, and I thought this would be a perfect spot to put tiny homes. Little did I know that these lots were too tiny for even a tiny home to exist. The 3 lots in question, 100, 102, 104, which is also known as lots 15, 16, 17, were respectively 16.75 feet wide, 16.25 feet wide, and 17.5 feet wide. And with a 5-foot setback on either side and a wall thickness, there's no way to put a house with a 7-foot minimum interior space. So there was really no way to comply with the code. We've investigated various combinations, but in essence, we wanted to put 3 units on these 3 lots. And what we've come up with is to combine these 3 lots into a single lot. It allows us to put the 3 units with a fire separation like we did in Highland and comply with the setback requirements on the side, front, and rear. These 3 tiny lots were also on the tiniest street, I think, in Syracuse. Green Street Court is only 78 feet long and 15 and a half feet wide. It does spray out at the end to the 38 and a half feet, but the configuration is such that there is no logical way to comply with the zoning ordinance to have a 12-foot driveway come back 10 feet and then accommodate 3 spaces for essentially 3 homeless individuals that have no car. So that's, in essence, one of the reasons why we withdrew the application. We'll go to the ZBA to get relief, as we've done on other sites that have been just as problematic. With that said, essentially, it's a very simple application to combine the 3 lots. It allows us to put the structure in its place to the same standards as we've had before and meet all of the building requirements. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them, but I think this is a pretty simple application, and I hope you understand the reason why we withdrew the other. At some point in the future, I think it might be logical to consider abandonment of this very short, very tiny street, and essentially that would become the driveway to this lot. And at some point in the future, we may be back to investigate that. But right now, we want to move forward by combining these lots, go into the ZBA for the relief on the parking requirement so that we can start construction and get 3 more individuals off of the street. With that said, I'll defer to Andrea Lynetta. You might want to say something about the program.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Craig. My name's Andrew Lynetta, Director of a Tiny Home for Good, 514 Roland Street. Craig knocked it out of the park, said pretty much everything. But for those of you who might not be aware of what we do, we build really small homes for men and women coming out of the shelter system, typically on vacant lots. That's why I'm here a lot, is because the city doesn't have a real good use for them. So we're trying to fit a need. And for these particular parcels, I think it is a beautiful spot for our houses on a bus line, close to the services that our men and women need, and set back a little bit from the street. So I'm excited about this particular project, and just thanks for hearing us out today. Anybody have any questions?
The unit that you're going to build is, what was it, 1,200 square feet or thereabouts?
Come out to, Craig?
I didn't have that in my head. I think it's just over 1,000 square feet. On this
Okay.
side is actually the floor plan of the 3 units. And 32 feet by 37 foot 6 inches, give or take. A recessed porch in the center unit.
Yeah. In 2019, we built 3 units almost identical to what Craig has developed for us here over on the corner of Highland and Null, and those have been quite successful to date.
Well, true to the organization's name, you're ferreting out the tiniest places on the tiniest streets, it sounds like. So
Yeah.
keep up the search. Questions for the applicant? Good.
Great.
Okay, thank you both very much. Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come to the podium, provide your name, address for the record, and your comments.
I'm Andrea Wandersee. I'm the Executive Director of NEDA, the Northeast Holly Development Association at 101 Gertrude Street. We do community development on the north side. For the record, I live in Eastwood at 139 Cook. We do support this project. We think it's a great use of a really unique street here in town, and I think that's about it, but NEDA does support the project.
Thank you. Other people who wish to speak in favor of the application, please come to the podium. He's doing something else, okay. Then, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? If so, please come to the podium, provide your name and address and your comments. Anyone opposed? I think that's it for speakers tonight for that application, so we will declare this hearing closed and move to possible action if there's a motion on this application. This is R-21-26, the excuse me, proposed re-subdivision on Green Street Court.
Move to approve the negative declaration?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The subdivision is approved. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Our next public hearing, please.
The next two public hearings are also companion pieces. We have a re-subdivision and a project site review. The re-subdivision is R2129. This is to divide one property into two new lots at 800 to 808 East Fayette Street. Wellington Place LLC is the owner and applicant. All the properties lie within a Business Class A zoning district. The project site review is PR 2107, and this is for new construction and site alterations to construct a 6-story building with 123 dwelling units. This is also at 800 to 808 East Fayette Street. Wellington Place LLC is the owner, and Gilbane Development Company is the applicant, and the properties lie within a Business Class A zoning district.
Thank you. The applicant is getting things set up for the presentation, and please begin when you're ready.
Good evening, thank you. Brian Bouchard with CHA Consulting, project engineer. Also with me is Mike Dapp from Gilbane Development, the applicant and developer for this project, and John Harding from Cube 3, who's the project architect. Just a quick introduction. So we've been working on this project for the better part of 8 months, starting with pre-development in coordination with the city staff, working through the internal design with the design team, but are very excited about it based on its location, the ability to transform really what's an underutilized parcel into a valuable asset within the East Genesee Street business corridor, right along that connective corridor, and connecting downtown to the university, as well as supporting some of those local restaurants and businesses along East Genesee Street. So, project location. In your packet, we have an aerial. It's located, it's basically the western half of the block, bounded by East Fayette, which is to the north, Foreman, which is to the west, and then Wellington Place, which is a short substreet between Irving and Foreman. It's directly across from the Upstate Biotech Accelerator, the little futuristic building that's just to the north of us, and it's basically just to the west of the Theory Syracuse project that we worked on. Just to the south is Foreman Park, and that is the East Genesee Street business corridor with that connective corridor between downtown and the university. Located within the Business Class A zoning district, and the existing site is approximately 2.2 acres, which consists of a flat parking lot. The companion piece I'll address is a subdivision. What we're proposing to do is subdivide the existing parking lot in order to provide half an acre to the current owner of the property to retain as 47 parking spaces. And the project before you for the project site review would consist of 1.7 acres for the residential apartment project. This is not in your packet because it is actually part of the parking lot development plans that are administrative approval, but it just illustrates the piece that will be retained and reconfigured into a gated parking lot for the existing owner.
Brian, can you go back to that? So that's an adjacent parcel?
No, so it currently exists as 2.2 acres. It's basically a square with a little appendage on it based on the old lots that were distributed. So it's one existing parcel today. and we've created a new lot line for the re-subdivision.
Gotcha.
So that the seller can retain 47 spaces within that portion of the existing parking lot, and the new project will exist essentially on the more geometric square that we've provided for the project site review.
Okay.
There should be a copy of the re-subdivision plan as well, right? So that's the new lot line that's being created. So the proposed project is a residential apartment building. It's 193 units on 6 stories. Within the building and the interior space, there's 194 parking spaces. The area that you see in the center of the building is 35 parking spaces, and there's also a ramp to an underground parking garage that consists of 159 parking spaces. Just want to point out that our total between both our project and the adjacent lot is 241 spaces, and it's actually less than the 320 spaces that are existing there today. But we do have sufficient parking for the project. The building has been placed around the perimeter of the site, as you can see, which was purposeful to kind of engage the streetscape there with the building itself and the entranceways. The driveway access for the parking areas is off of Wellington Place, which is a shorter street where there's really no significant through traffic. It's a stop sign on both ends with Foreman and Irving. There will be a driveway for that surface parking lot, and this interior surface parking lot is not a required firefighting access point, but we did talk at length with Chief Davis regarding his ability to approach the building both from the street frontages and removing power lines on East Fayette, but also his ability to get to this building through the 2 end caps on Wellington, but as a third way to actually get into that interior parking area and be able to reach some of the inside spaces within the building as well. So there's 35 spaces with driveway access in the center, and also right next to it is a driveway that would access the underground parking ramp. The main building entrance itself, and I'll leave the architecture and the floor plans to John, but the main building entrance is in the southwest corner, which is on Foreman, and directly, Foreman discharges to East Genesee Street. There's the Foreman Park across the road, and that East Genesee Street business corridor there. We were in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals for variances that are needed for the setbacks. Again, the intent is for the building to touch the road and kind of have that street level activity, as well as lot coverage, which is a mathematical calculation of building footprint versus parking. And in our case, we have a lot of the parking interior to the actual building footprint itself. So we were granted relief for the setbacks and the coverage that we needed. And I talked a little bit as well about density because it was there on their agenda, but understood from the zoning office that the density is something that this board considers as far as a waiver. So I would like to address that with you all. Based on this project within the local business Class A district, the current code requires 1,000 square feet of land mass for each unit, so 1 unit per 1,000 square feet of lot area. Our project, as you can see in the zoning table that we've provided on your handout and in the application materials, is proposing 383 square feet per unit, which is the calculation of our 193 units on 1.7 acres. There are a lot of complexities to the construction of this, and for our justification, taking right out of the City of Syracuse's Comprehensive Plan 2040, and I'll quote, within the goals and recommendations of that plan, as far as economic development, is to facilitate higher residential density along neighborhood business corridors. And then it goes on to say that it's to support and encourage high-density residential projects on upper floors of corridor buildings and on properties adjacent to the commercial corridors to promote more foot traffic, interaction vitality as recommended by the land use plan, and then in parentheses that this may call for zoning changes as well as selectively incentivizing residential projects when market conditions do not. So we feel that our density request is very much in line. You know, even though the zoning may have been written some time ago, the land use plan is a little bit more current document with a forward-thinking vision, and that this project fits into that goals and recommendations of the comp plan. We also looked and researched, obviously, what this would look like potentially, you know, a year from now or however long it may take for the rezone Syracuse plan to come to fruition. The city's been working on this plan, obviously, for 5 years now. This lies within the MX4 district, and within that future plan, you know, taking some of the goals and sort of metrics that are established for the MX4 district is to establish and provide for pedestrian-friendly, transit-supportive areas of higher density residential development. And it goes on to say, you know, that the district is intended to promote the street level active streetscape and accommodate larger scale projects within the larger nodes and primary corridors. Another justification would be this is a solely residential project. Although it is within an allowable use within the business Class A zoning district, because it is a solely residential project, it has a density requirement, whereas other non-residential uses per se, you know, right down the corner we have the Crown Plaza Hotel that's 20 stories and has 277 rental units, although it's by the night and not per the year. But so it's a little bit of an intricacy as well with the district that we're in and kind of trying to blend into that district with the density requirement that we're held to within the current zoning. Also, as I mentioned, this is the only waiver that we're requesting for this project from this body. A lot of times with increased density, projects aren't able to capture the required parking count, but we have. So we have enough units and we have enough parking to support the project. And then just generally, you've seen all of the other projects that are in very close proximity to this, right? The 505 on Walnut, U Point, which is on University Ave, the Marshall, which is further up on the hill, but more specifically the Theory Syracuse project, which is a few hundred feet away. That project, just for reference, has a density of 380 square feet per unit. So basically equivalent to the request that we have and hope that you support for this project as well. So that's the site plan in a nutshell. We did get the staff comments, and just to go through those, we have no issues with any of the comments that the transportation planner, city engineer, or DPW have recommended within that. There are some things that we will develop as far as the building permit set, and we will capture all of those comments within there. Specific to what I just talked about in the streetscape, there is not a lot of sidewalk width on this street. We want to encourage the pedestrian activity to and from the business corridor. Wellington Place itself has no sidewalk. It's actually just a paved asphalt strip. So Neil has laid out basically wider sidewalks. You know, Fayette should have an 8-foot wide sidewalk to kind of connect this to some of the other areas that are up and down Fayette. Wider sidewalk widths along Foreman and Wellington in front of the project. And then specifically called out, you know, connecting the amenity spaces, which we have an exterior courtyard in the center of the building, to that sidewalk infrastructure as well. Utilities, we do have comments, which is typical of any project, where we have a parking lot essentially that has no sewer usage. So we do intend to submit our one-to-one offset and mitigation program for the increase in sewer usage that will be associated with the project and the residential units. But also at the same time, you know, providing the off-site mitigation. Typically it's by way of developer-sponsored sanitary sewer improvements within this sewer shed to eliminate inflow and infiltration, whether it's by lining, manhole lining, or replacement of pipes in order to offset that sewer usage. As well as, it's an existing parking lot now, all of which drains to the combined sewer. We can't change that it's a combined sewer that we're discharging to, but because of the disturbance of this being greater than 10,000 square feet, we will have the benefit of not only offsetting our sewer usage, but also coming into compliance with today's drainage requirements, both for the city and the state, in order to manage the runoff that falls on the roof and the hard surfaces, treat it and manage it within, for both volume and quality within an underground drainage system, and provide those benefits as well. So with that, I'll just ask John Harding with Cube 3 to come up and just take you through the building materials, floor plans, and elevations very quickly.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Well, it's nice to see you all in person. Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm just going to try to be a little bit more brief.
You just provide your name and address for the record, and then launch right into your presentation.
John Harding with Cube 3 in 370 Merrimack Street, Lawrence, Massachusetts. So I'm just going to walk through a little bit of the planning ideas. Brian's already touched a little bit on that, but we did look at a few different configurations of this building. We had 2 pre-development meetings with the city staff. The first one was a substantially different looking building than this. It was still 6 stories, but the whole first floor was mostly parking with a small kind of amenity area, roughly in the same location of where we have it now. And the existing, or the parking to remain, was more of a rectangular shape on Wellington Place. And so the building was a long kind of E shape, mostly along Fayette Street, coming down into Foreman Ave. Some of the major comments that we got from that was the lack of activation on the street-facing facades, and trying to kind of find a way to hide the parking, really, and create that activation. So we went away and thought, how can we revisit this? How can we think about this more creatively? And engaged a general contractor for some pre-construction advice. And we came back and said, I think we can find a way to put the majority of the parking below grade. So you can see in the bottom left corner here, the underground parking plan, the ramp that comes down. There's kind of an oval shaped roundabout around that ramp, and then a little bit of a dead end underneath the amenity space. Trying to work with the grade to also leave enough room for stormwater management in this kind of empty space in between. So trying to be able to work with where the existing utilities are, how we're going to make connections, and think about all of the different pieces that would go into this without kind of creating more problems for ourselves with this. What that did was it allowed us to activate the ground floor with residential units. So those units are raised up about 3 or so feet above grade. So you don't have windows right at sidewalk level with people looking in, but you create a little bit more privacy for those units, but you still get that activation of those windows engaging on all of the street facing sides, except for where the amenity space is. So here in purple, the main entrance to the building, we brought that floor level right down to sidewalk level. You'll have a little bit higher ceilings in that way. We worked the parking to kind of slope down a little bit underneath that, so we get all the clear head heights that we need. But getting that activation, especially on the corner of Wellington and Foreman, we felt that relationship to Foreman Park into the East Genesee corridor was vital for all of this kind of influx of new residents to be able to get out onto that corridor, get out and use those businesses, and do what the comprehensive plan was talking about to get that activation out onto that area. Even though this parcel is not right on that corridor, we felt it was important to be able to get the front door as visible to that as possible. In that space, there'll be a variety of different uses, from a leasing center where the on-site management will be, a fitness center, there'll probably be a little bit of a club room, there'll be a pretty good sized bike storage room that we've accessed directly off of Foreman Ave, so roughly in that location there. And then the main elevator core and stair core to go up in the building, and then there'll be a stair that kind of transitions up into the residential floor, and so everything you see in blue there are the residential units. Then working your way up, kind of, you have a typical floor in the bottom right image here. So it's the U shape of those units. And what I will say too is we thought about how this building was going to be oriented. So this courtyard opens to the south, getting as much light into this area to be able to activate the on-grade courtyard that we have. That area will have a series of kind of amenities for the residents, including like fire pits and grilling stations and that sort of programming. So active programming with nice light. And then up at the 5th floor, we have another amenity space. So kind of a roof deck area. It again will be like kind of a double height space and has a big outdoor kind of patio space there. So really letting the building kind of step back as it gets higher in these fingers that reach out. And then you can see, let's see that.
If it helps with your presentation, we think the microphone can disengage if you wish to stand right next to the diagrams,
think
if that's helpful.
Can make this work. So you can see in this image here, which is really about showing the materiality of the building. It also helps show those step backs in that outside space on that one leg here at Foreman. And then just talking through some of that materiality. So we wanted to make sure we have at the publicly facing side very high quality materials, stuff that's going to be durable around the ground plane. So we have pretty much a mostly masonry facade for those first 4 stories at that corner. And again, also at the other side of this of these 2 legs, we have these 2 kind of masonry towers in the brownish colored volumes. At the ground floor, we have a running bond pattern of kind of varied size masonry block, and that actually runs all the way around the base of the building. So where the building hits the ground, it's going to have a nice strong masonry base. And then as you move around, we go to more residential materials using fiber cement siding, both in lap siding and panel formats in a variety of different colors, from a red color that will match the masonry to a couple different light gray colors, some medium gray colors, and some darker gray colors on the backside, which you can see in the elevations that were submitted. I think what we're trying to do here is create a very modern looking building, something that feels contextual to a lot of the other development that we've seen in Syracuse, something that's distinctly different. It's, you know, especially with Theory being so close, we want to make sure that we look very different than that project, but in the same kind of stylistic companionship, I guess. So we're trying to do something with some textures, some colors, and really tie this building together, give it its own identity, and do some really cool volumetric things with the massing. I think at that, I'll turn it over to Brian, I guess, if there's anything else.
Nope, that's really all I had. So we went through the site plan. You know, he did mention the internal bike parking. That was also one of Neil's comments because it wasn't necessarily on the floor plans, but that is a commitment along with exterior bike parking adjacent to the amenity space in the main entrances. We also talked about the density, which is a waiver that we do feel is justifiable based on those reasons and the architecture. So if there's any other questions or comments or discussion, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for the presentation and for explicitly addressing the waiver request in your presentation. Are there any questions for the applicants regarding this project?
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Surprise. First of all, I want to compliment you on putting parking underground. You've both mentioned the Theory project several times, and no doubt somewhere along the line, someone told you about the struggle to get them to move parking off of the first floor. So congratulations for doing that. I also think that the use of materials and the limited degree of setbacks that you've employed in the design makes this more than a big box. I think that's a plus as well. And I know you're here asking for, in part, a waiver because our density rules are a lot outdated. So I appreciate the fact that you looked at the land use plan in terms of trying to create density. All of that said, I must say that I'm disappointed on 2 counts. Well, first of all, I'm shocked on 1 count, which has nothing to do with your proposal in and of itself. It's just that I find it hard to believe this community needs another purpose-built student housing project, when I can think of at least 2 more, one that we approved a block away that we haven't heard about in a long time, the one around the Christian Science Church. Right. One a few more blocks away that involves a historic building, which, by the way, that's also a compliment. You're not ripping anything down for your proposal, so thank you for that. And yet another one, 3 blocks up the street on Genesee Street. I have no idea who does your market analysis, but they must be wizards. I've lived here my entire life. I do not know where this population is going to come from. So I guess good luck if this ends up going ahead. But the other thing that disappoints me, and Brian, you actually quoted a great passage out of the land use plan that talks about these dense developments that bring vibrancy to a business area, in particular by engaging in the pedestrian level. And unfortunately, this doesn't do that. There's housing with people who are going to close their blinds every day. So even though you might have put windows there, there's not the engagement if this was retail space. So while you have a tiny piece on the corner of Foreman and Wellington that might provide some activity and interaction and a sense of safety and engagement for pedestrians, the vast majority of what faces on the streets does not. And I find that a little, I find that to be a very large missed opportunity. And perhaps if there was more of that built into this, it would meet the intent of the land use plan, which is to create mixed-use buildings, not dormitories in business areas. So those are my two primary concerns, that I don't know how the market can bear this, but setting that aside for a moment, from a city planning perspective, this kind of misses the mark in terms of engagement. Yes, you've brought the building up to the street. Yes, you're going to propose improvements to the public right-of-way, but it effectively is dead space to walk by. And that's a whole city block on Foreman, and it's a half of a city block on Genesee. And if the Interstate 81 project goes forward, 2 blocks away is the major entrance into the university. And that means hopefully a big shot in the arm for the business district, and we really would have a lot of people walking around in the Genesee Street business area. So I have those two concerns about this. All those other things, I think this is great, but that lack of activity and transparency on the first floor in terms of pedestrian engagement, I find a missed opportunity.
Thank you for that, and definitely understood. I think just to, and Mike can add to it, but some of the approach was that there is a lot of vacant buildings and structures and businesses that are on the corridor proper, right? The business corridor on Genesee Street, and that this is sort of that step away to provide the viable project. But the commercial aspect wasn't in the program, and I don't know if Mike App with Gilbane wants to add a little bit to that as well.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Mike Apt with Gilbane Development Company. Our company's based out of Providence, Rhode Island. I'm based out of Philadelphia. Great comments. If I can, I'd like to just talk about them for a little bit. One, as Brian said, the retail corridor along Genesee, that's kind of where it belongs. The other retail that has tried to be developed on Theory on the other corner there at Irving and East Fayette Street is still see-through. It hasn't leased up yet. We believe that bringing the students and the occupants, tenants of this building, that creates another mass of people who will then use the retail commercial area along these areas. But in the building itself, it doesn't generate enough to service commercial in that area. But together combined, Theory, us there, and the others around will help the area in terms of commercial and retail that currently is vacant in the area. In terms of does the city of Syracuse need a project like this? We have done the market research. I personally have done that. The projects off-campus projects in and around the university are pre-leased at 90, almost, and most of them 100% at this point for the August 2021 fall semester. The university, although it took a downturn in COVID, is now more applicants than ever have come to the university. The university expects to go back to pre-COVID levels and grow at a modest amount of 1% to 2% per year. This project won't come online for another 2 years. Taking advantage of the up enrollment of the campus is going to be good for a project like this and should remain occupied. And that, even taking into account the other projects that may or may not be approved in the city, accounts for those tenants, and that this university in this area can use more housing off campus. And the university right now has no plans to add additional housing on campus. So hopefully that addresses your comments. And I appreciate all the comments on the architecture and everything. We have worked with city staff to take a building that had all parking on the first floor and shifted it down below grade, which I think is a great accomplishment of this building, and I think it will fit great in the city of Syracuse. The residential, although I agree, it is residential, it's not commercial, I've already addressed that, but we have activation along Foreman and Wellington, the park across the street, the storefront, all there, the outdoor courtyard along Wellington, I think is going to bring that vibrancy back to this area, which is currently underutilized as a parking lot that houses upstate medical university cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional, additional questions or comments from the commission members for the applicant team? Okay. Good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's now see if there are individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application. Just provide your name and address before offering your comments,
My name
please.
is Mike Quigley. My address is 821 East Genesee Street, right across Wellington Place from the project. I'm president of Rothschild Development Corporation. I'm here on behalf of Rothschild Development and Wellington Place, the owner of 800-808 East Fayette Street. Wellington Place is an affiliate of Rothschild Development. Over the past 30 years, we've assembled the numerous small parcels that make up the Wellington site. The site has been used as surface parking for many years. Over the years, we've watched the surrounding area grow and evolve with new residential, commercial, and institutional uses. We feel the Gilbane project fits in well with the surrounding neighborhood and is the highest and best use for the property. The Rothschild family has owned and operated businesses on East Genesee Street since the 1920s. Over the years, they have invested in these properties and supported the growth and development of the area. The Rothschild properties are currently located on East Genesee Street, directly across the street from the site. They are now leased to Nuns Home Medical Equipment and SU's Community Folk Arts Center. Rothschild Development Corporation has made major investments in the East Genesee Street area. As I said, my office is in the 800 block of East Genesee Street. We also developed Madison Irving Medical Center, a large medical office building a short distance away on Irving Avenue. As some of you may know, my partner Alan Rothschild had a leadership role for years in the growth and improvement of the East Genesee area. Alan served as president of the East Genesee Region Association and worked tirelessly with the city, area businesses, and institutions until his untimely passing a few months ago. Alan's son David is here with me today and shares his dad's strong commitment to our neighborhood. Over the years, Rothschild Development explored a number of different uses for the Wellington site. Before deciding to proceed with this project, we considered healthcare, commercial, and institutional uses. We made proposals and had serious discussions with various University Hill institutions. We also looked at medical office use, because that's what we do. We interviewed a number of other developers, and after careful consideration, we concluded that student housing was the highest and best use, and that Gilbane Development was best suited to develop the site. Gilbane is a family-owned company. They have a national footprint, and they have a long history and extensive experience with these projects. The Gilbane project covers about 3/4 of the site. We are retaining a parcel at the east end of the site as parking to serve our commercial properties on East Genesee Street. Gilbane has presented the project to the East Genesee Region Association, and expressed an interest in working closely with the association. We strongly feel the project will enhance the East Genesee Business District and the overall University Hill area. There are a number of vacant commercial spaces along East Fayette Street. We feel the additional residential base will help fill these vacancies and encourage further development of the vacant sites north of us over towards Erie Boulevard. Gilbane and their team have been working for several months to achieve a plan that takes into account the city requirements and the requirements of our site. We are pleased to see the Board of Appeals approve the project at its hearing last Thursday. In conclusion, and on behalf of Rothschild Development Corporation and Wellington Place LLC, I hope the Commission will support the application and our re-subdivision to allow the project to become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Other individuals who may wish to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, provide your name, address, and comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? If so, please come forward. So we have no additional speakers, and I think we are in a place to close these two public hearings. And with that, as I think Heather indicated at the outset, we have the re-subdivision application and project site review. And while it makes sense to hear both proposals concurrently, or both applications concurrently, action will be taken separately on these two. First of the two being the re-subdivision application, R-21-29. Is there a motion on this application?
I move to approve with a negative declaration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion before us concerning the re-subdivision application. If there's no discussion, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. And if there are any abstentions, please so indicate. I believe that it's been approved. So R-21-29, the re-subdivision portion of these two applications has been approved. It takes us to the project site review, which is PR-21-07. Is there a motion on this application?
I move approval of the negative declaration.
Second.
Thank you both. Discussion on the motion before us for project site review. If no discussion is needed, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
And any abstentions? So the project site review is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the presenters and speakers. We move next to yet another re-subdivision application.
Just 1 second.
Good evening.
Oh, hang on, just 1 second. Can't write
Officially
it down.
introduce the application
No,
and
wait.
then ask you for your
I'm
presentation.
in no rush.
Okay, the next public hearing is R-2132. This is a re-subdivision to combine two properties into one new lot at 227 and 233 McKinley Avenue. University Hill Apartments, Inc. and the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the owners and applicants, and all the both properties lie within a residential class AA zoning district.
Good evening, I'm Andrea Wandersee. I'm the Executive Director of NIDA. We're at 101 Gertrude Street. I'm sorry Taisha Martin couldn't be here tonight. We're here on behalf of the Land Bank, and we're presenting justification for this re-subdivision for 227 McKinley Avenue with 233 McKinley. 227 McKinley was purchased by University Hill Apartments in March of 2021, and they are in the process of rehabbing this 2-unit rental building. In October 2019, the Land Bank demolished the dilapidated 2-family house at 233 McKinley, and University Hill Apartments would like to purchase the vacant lot. The adjacent property on the other side, the owner's been contacted and has not responded at all. So there isn't an opportunity to split the property. We feel that even though the lot's buildable, it's highly unlikely we'll find an investor for this property, and because of where it's located. We don't anticipate Home Headquarters, Housing Visions, or the Resurgent Neighborhoods Initiative to take advantage of this property. It's awfully close to I-81. There's a property across the street that's comparable with the size, that's 80 by 130. And we, like so many of our resubs, feel that this is a good idea because the owner will then receive one tax bill. We won't have an orphaned vacant lot in the future. And if the owner decides to apply for permits for a driveway or fence in the future, the resub will already have taken place. Does anyone have any questions?
Let's check. No, good, good. All set? Apparently not.
I've lost my audience.
Then we will ask if anyone would like to speak in favor of this application. If so, to come to the podium and provide name, address, and comments. No one's rushing. We'll then ask if anyone wants to speak in opposition to the application to also come to the podium, provide name and address and comments. And so no additional speakers on this application. We can close this hearing, and we will entertain a motion for action either way on this.
I move approval with a negative declaration, noting that there is indeed a similar size lot across the street, and the unique situation of this being a dead-end block near the interstate make this an acceptable solution.
Second.
Discussion on the motion before us? If there's no discussion, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And if there are any abstentions, please indicate. So R-21-32, the re-subdivision on McKinley Ave is approved. Thank you for the presentation. And one new additional hearing for tonight, another re-subdivision. Heather, would you please introduce this one, or Jeff?
Yes, the last public hearing is R-21-33, also a re-subdivision to combine 2 properties into one new lot at 925 and 927 Butternut Street. Lynn Musanga and the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the owners and applicants, and these properties lie within a business class A zoning district.
Good evening again. I'm Andrea Wandersee, the Executive Director of NIDA, 101 Gertrude Street. The owner of 925 Butternut Street has a 4-unit apartment house. They'd like to purchase the property. The owner on the other side is tax delinquent and ineligible to be considered for purchase. The vacant lot is long and narrow. It's 30 by 136/81, so it's unlikely for new construction. There have been no other potential buyers for this property. And once, if this is approved, once the parcels are merged, this parcel will be irregularly shaped and be approximately 63 by 143. As I mentioned, the neighbor's tax delinquent, the other neighbor, and is ineligible to purchase. 925 Butternut Street does share a driveway with 927 Butternut, and the re-subdivision will then give the property owner control over the entire driveway. As, of course, you know, that Butternut Street has undergone a number of demolitions and some rebuilds and whatnot. There are several gaps in the streetscape. Lots do vary in size and frontage, and this lot's been an illegal dumping space. So we're hoping that by allowing the property owner next door to gain control, that they will be able to take care of the property, create some green space, and reduce some of the negative impacts of the nuisance behavior. And again, tax bill goes to one owner, there will be less likelihood of an orphaned lot, and it will allow any future permits to have an easier process. Any questions?
Thank you. I'm good, okay.
I can think of one reason why having this on Zoom is better, but.
So if there is anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward to do so. If anyone wishes to speak against the application, please come forward, provide your name and address and comments. So we have no additional speakers on the application. We'll close the hearing, and we are in a position to entertain a motion on this re-subdivision application, R-21-33, the Butternut Street project.
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion before us?
Again, I think it's just important to note that the vacant parcel is incredibly narrow, but also that there is really no existing traditional pattern on Butternut anymore. So we're not really breaking any pattern by proving something of this nature.
Good comment. And for the record, it's also important. If there's no further discussion on the motion, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. And if there are any abstentions, please so indicate. I believe this re-subdivision application is also approved, R-21-33. Thank you. We have other business but before we move to other business, I want to circle back to our very first hearing of the evening, where we did not take action because we didn't have a motion with a second to allow action. So let's revisit this and see if there's a motion for action either way. This is the project for an administrative permit for off-premises advertising in the 600 block of North Geddes Street. It's number AS-21-06, and we heard the presentation at the beginning of our meeting this evening. Is there a motion on this application AS-21-06?
For reason to have this hold over to another calendar? Is there any information that could be brought to us that might move us to a motion?
That's a good question, and I'll defer to our legal counsel, but I believe we always have the option of holding an item, although I think we did close the hearing, but we can hold off on action if commission members need to review the material, digest what was presented this evening. I think that's one option. Madam Legal Counsel?
Yes.
Are there additional options that come to mind in this instance?
That's correct, and you may also request additional information if you feel that you need it to make a decision.
Thank you. So those are the options, and so it does make a lot of sense if anyone is in need, any one of the commission members is in need of additional information in order to form an informed judgment on this application. Now would be the time to make that request known while the applicant is here, and could return at a later time or send it to the office. So if there's anything specific that's missing or that needs further clarification in terms of understanding the application before us, please speak up and indicate that. If there's no such informational request forthcoming, then I would simply ask the commission members to review the application materials that we received in advance of this meeting and review that in light of the presentation that was made this evening, in the hope that we'll be in a position to offer a motion either way at our next hearing, at our next meeting rather. Right now the hearing is closed, but we are holding off on action. So if there is a request, now is the time to make that known. If not, we will hold this item and return to it at our next meeting, which I believe will be in mid-July.
Do we need to make a formal motion to reopen the hearing?
Well, I don't know that we're officially reopening the hearing. We're delaying action, but I always stand corrected by legal counsel if there's a fine point of difference there, or if the commission would be in a better position to take an action now to reopen the hearing if a motion's not forthcoming at tonight's meeting.
You could make such a motion to reopen, but if you feel that you do have enough information and it's a matter of processing it and coming to a decision, then you don't have to reopen the hearing itself. But you can, after the hearing is closed, you can continue to request information from the applicant or from staff.
When I requested staff, in this submission, there was reference to another billboard that sits in a residential location. And just historically, not just for this applicant, but we have had it happen before while we're reviewing one item on one parcel. We've seen not just billboards that were placed and seen but in public view for 5-10 years. We've also seen restaurants that appeared in small places where people took it for granted that they went through the proper permitting. So if we could find out about the billboard that's referenced here, that's I think he said digital billboard, we'd probably like to know if that is there appropriately, because it certainly, its location is going to affect our decision here.
I would agree with that. That would be good to know.
It was Belden Ave. It's the example that was cited. That would be helpful to know a little bit of the history, when it appeared, and if there's a record that supports its appearance with the requisite city approvals.
And also, if either the land use plan or the comprehensive plan makes any policy statements about this kind of signage.
Okay, so we will gather. Our reliable staff will gather additional information and provide that in advance of the next meeting of the commission. Okay. So, sir, are you understanding where we are with this right now?
That's what I want to make sure. So
Yeah.
this is just going to be carried over to the next meeting?
Yes, and you heard a couple of points of information requested relative to the example that you provided for another facility nearby, and we've asked staff to gather that information, share that with us, and we'll take that into consideration, and I hope be in a position to formalize a motion, again, either way, at the next meeting of the commission, which will be I think it's the 19th of July. That's right.
And would I do the presentation all over again at that time?
No, that wouldn't be necessary. We've closed the hearing. We'll accept the additional information that we requested tonight from staff, but I don't believe there's a need to make the presentation again.
But just appear at that particular time?
Right, in case a question emerges that evening, yes. Okay, well, thank you for your appearance tonight. You're welcome to stay. We have a little bit more business to do. Okay. So we now move to our new business category, and we have a couple of items here. First being a 3-mile limit case. Heather, Jeff, could you introduce that one, please?
Yes, this is 3S2106. This is the 3-mile limit subdivision review in the town of Onondaga, Taleb Family Farm subdivision to combine 5 properties into 3 new lots at 4005 to 4075 Griffin Road. The purpose is to create 3 single-family building lots. Town of Onondaga approved this in April of this year. And it has been reviewed by all the applicable parties, including the county planning agency, county planning board.
This is, again, our new process, new this year, with 3-mile limit cases, and the engineering office has reviewed and found no problems, which is why it appears for us as new business. Are there questions about the 3-mile limit case in the town of Onondaga?
No.
Seems straightforward. And then is there a motion for action on this item, 3S-21-06?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Second, nope, sorry.
Lots of seconds, okay.
Slow, sorry.
Thank you all. Discussion on the motion. Then all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. If there are any abstentions, please indicate. It looks like 3S-21-06 is approved, and we have one more new business item
And
tonight.
before we get to that, Catherine, my every meeting request about whether or not we need to do seeker if the planning board's already done seeker. The county planning board's already done seeker, so.
I do agree with you. Where it does get a little bit complicated is our re-subdivision standards being sort of unique, and that's where I'm.
Okay. That's okay. I'm just gonna be a nudge.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the next new business item is Z2289M1. This is a multi-building review modification to modify the site plan at 322 to 360 Seymour Street. A building permit was submitted to replace and repair roofs and driveways at multiple addresses in this vicinity, this being one of them. So it necessitated a review because we discovered that this was built not according to the previous approval, which was for 18 dwelling units. And so they wish to maintain the 20 that were built. The existing site conditions, which are the proposed conditions to maintain, do not necessitate any waivers from the zoning rules and regulations, so that's why this is a new business item.
So we're effectively retroactively approving a change to the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Of some age.
I was thinking that, yes.
When do we think that happened?
1983, I don't know.
I would say early 80s?
Yeah.
The original.
At the time that it was approved, and they were doing the construction, I don't know how, but they ended up building 20 units instead of the 18.
Those units are occupied today, correct? Yeah, right. They're in use. I mean, it's not as though they're,
It's a scattered site.
Yeah.
It's not all together.
yeah.
You guys probably approved that.
I'm sure I was way too young to know. I was just following the lead of people who are more experienced.
So that's why it's on your agenda.
Questions? Comments?
No.
We could move to action then. Is there a motion for this one, the multi-building review modification?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second.
Discussion? And all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions, please indicate. So that application Z-2289. We have hearings. Is there any other business before we get to the authorizations?
I have two old business things. So one is in response to the student housing project we saw tonight. We've approved so many of these, and that, with exception of Theory and the one further down Genesee Street, really none of the rest have been built. So how many are out there that need time extensions right now? Because my feeling is that after they get the one that they always get, we should be looking very carefully at all of these, because with due respect to the developer who says his market study shows this is great, having just been in a meeting with Syracuse University and watching them do soil borings for where they have 2 dormitories planned, I really don't know where these people are coming from. And I know that one kind of sort of market study we saw, that then the IDA staff at the time told us wasn't really a market study.
They didn't even let us look at it.
Right, we didn't even get to see it, they just sort of summarized it for us. But I know that it didn't, as I recall, it did not include upstate students, and it seems like there was another institution, maybe it didn't count Lemoyne, I don't recall, or maybe it didn't count ESF. Regardless, I think even if you throw those folks into the mix, I still can't believe we need this number of units, beds, what have you. But I'm not the one who's gonna lose money. We are the community, though, that will be faced with all these big boxes at some point that might not be filled, because we just don't have an increase in population. But all of that said, it would seem much like we've talked about in the lakefront. After 5 or 6 of these extensions, life conditions are different, and it might be worth not approving at some point if these folks don't go forward. So I just want to sort of share that with you. That's my thought process. The one that's around the Christian Science Church is at least a couple of years before COVID, it seems to me, which would be at least 3 years now, 4 years. So I don't know how many extensions they've received or how many we've given them. But to me, before we give them another one, I don't know, somebody should rethink this. So I'm letting you know how my thought process will be if people come in for these things.
We can do some research and see what we can find.
Because there's this one, the one behind the former Ronald McDonald House, which is a little more recent. There's obviously the behemoth one that's proposed for the Temple Edeth site, Temple Concord site, and I feel like there's one more, but maybe I've forgotten it, or maybe I'm making that up because there's just so many of them. But there's at least those 2, and now this one is 3. This is 600 something beds, right? The Temple project is at least another 600 or 700 beds. I don't remember what the other one was. So again, I understand giving people extensions because things happen and projects don't go forward necessarily in a year. But once we're 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years out, I think we need to re-examine what conditions on the ground are and whether or not we would grant approval or not at this time. So, and I'm really sorry they didn't have more retail space because this wasn't that bad, but it's just basically, it's a dormitory. And I realize Theory space might not be full, but it could be. It could be. These folks won't even have space that might be able to attract a tenant. So anyway, second thing was, and this relates to where Steve wants to go next, which is the next public hearings. I know when I made a motion to help our friends at SU get their ramp that it was on the condition that at our very next meeting, we would be looking at a re-subdivision, and we're not. It's on for the next meeting. So,
I've not released that, that memo.
okay, so what do we do since that's what's in the record, and they're coming back not at this meeting, but the next meeting?
If you want to accept, make a motion to accept that, then. When was the application?
In my motion at the last meeting, I said that we would approve whatever it was they were asking for on the condition that they would come with a new re-subdivision so that the property lines didn't go through all the buildings and that the ramp would actually be built on the right property. But I made a point of saying that they had to be at this meeting with the re-subdivision request. So it's not here today. So effectively, they didn't meet the conditions. And granted, they might not have their approval, but do we need to do something? Or do we just summarily accept the re-subdivision request?
I think you can, and you can and note that, but if you would like to make a motion now to do that, you can, but if you'd like to wait.
I just want to make sure that it's clean, and again, I'm always thinking about the next applicant who's going to say, well, you gave the university condition and they didn't meet it, but then you let them do whatever they wanted anyway. So I just want to make sure the record's clear.
Yeah, so I'm holding on to that, it's a memo, it's not a resolution, until they come to the next meeting because of that condition. I did not release it because that was a condition and they did not meet it.
Okay.
And they did not submit a complete application in time to be on this meeting.
So if we were to act, if we approve the public hearing for the re-subdivision and we act on the subdivision next time, do we need to go back and clean up the original approval, or is it just, or in this re-subdivision approval, could we condition it?
You could note the condition, why if they present something that's some extenuating circumstance on why they didn't meet that condition, what then would be like a new condition, essentially why you accept or don't accept what they say.
Okay, so then if we could just tell the applicant, you should come to that meeting, explain why you missed it, and then when we presumably approve the re-subdivision, we can say, and we note that even though you missed a meeting, it was not done in bad faith, yada, 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 and that would be okay?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I'm always thinking about the next person who's gonna want to say.
It also means there should be some reflection of a summarized version of that in the minutes somehow, I think. Otherwise, there's no way to go back and show the next person 6 months from now, this is what we held the applicant to.
So maybe in tonight's minutes under an old business item, we could note that we noticed this didn't happen, but they are on the agenda, and assuming they make, again, that they can show they didn't do this in bad faith, and that's why we're putting it on the agenda, it's okay, and we'll reserve the right to obviously consider them and deliberate next time. So, okay, I feel better about that then.
And the project plan review will be released at the same time.
Yeah. Again, assuming they explain why they weren't here, and I'm sure they can come up with a reason. Right, would assume, yeah, I would think they could.
We're waiting on their Zoom link.
Or the land, I'm sure that it's gonna be that they couldn't get the surveyor to do what they needed to do in snap time. But I think, again, that needs to be there so that no one else can try to bamboozle us. And now I'm done, I promise.
Any other business aside from the authorizations? So it looks like we have 4 at the moment, plus the hearing goes in front tonight on James Street. And the hearing was closed, but that won't be an authorization. We just are a little pause before we act on it. So we have those 5 for July 19th. Is there a motion to authorize those hearings?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Those are authorized. We are almost to adjournment, and we no longer have to ask our legal counsel about an update on the executive order since we're here in person. Thank goodness that has happened. Any other business for us tonight, or are we ready to adjourn?
Yes, you are.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We're adjourned to the 19th.